I'm not interested in shooting like these coaches. I'm interested in shooting like the best players. If it was truly 90% arms, it's like, you wouldn't be shooting like Bedard. He doesn't shoot 90% arms. This video is for those of you who watch my how to shoot like Connor Bedard video and who know that he is doing something differently than what is traditionally being taught by a lot of hockey coaches out there. Going to dive right in, I have the computer right in front of me. I have an endless library of NHL clips from only the best players, because that's who I study. I study explicitly the best players on the planet. So that means I study exclusively the best shooters on the planet. I don't take advice from just coaches. I will hear what they say and then see if it aligns up with what is happening in video. My main claim or point in the video is that Connor Bedard is shooting differently than how he says he's shooting. So that's why I say he is wrong about how he's shooting. Not that he shoots wrong. Obviously, he does not shoot wrong. He has a terrific shot. Everyone has talked about it for years up until his NHL debut. But he is wrong specifically how he says he shoots. That is what he's wrong about, because he does something completely differently. So one of the first clips that you see here is what's showing on the screen right now. This one, we can look at it in slow-mo right here. His main claim is that his hands come away from his body. Now you can see when I go frame by frame here, obviously the top hand, especially right here, is off of his chest. So the problem here in this video is that when he punches his top hand out, when he says to get that top hand out, that is not the same way he gets his top hand out when he shoots. Yeah, because literally in this frame right here, you can see that he has his elbows fully extended. But if I show you this one again from the clip in a game, elbows are not extended, they're bent. They're bent. You can literally see them right here. They are bent. Both of them are bent as he rotates. And let's just say pulls the top hand back to his body, or if you want to call it that. I'm going to show you why it's not that in later clips here. So the problem is when people coach this, the same way that Bedsy is doing here, they will show you the top hand being so far out of the body that their elbows are fully extended just like this. Okay, that's not what they're doing. It's completely different. It's completely different, because you will see again, it's like off of the body, but it's not the same. That isn't the same as what he has when he's demoing it right here. It's just for demonstration effect. But even if a cue like that was true, we should see it basically consistently in all of the shots. Even this one doesn't go too far out or like really extended. It's just maybe like 6 inches off of his chest. Like, it's not that much. Top hand is close. Look at that. The video is going to be blurry here, but literally just his shoulders rotate, and then the levers that follow with his elbow and his wrists, which means you can have a smaller movement at your shoulder, but then that produces a wider movement the further you go out in the kinetic chain. That's exactly what's happening here with Bedard on his first WHL goal. Otherwise, his hand should be exactly where it was when he was demoing it, right in this picture right here. And it's not happening. And then just to show it with other NHLers, clip with Besser right here, the top hand doesn't extend like this. It stays right here and actually stays pretty close to his chest as he rotates. Another example, Caulfield. You might make the case that, oh, his top hand is off of his body, but look at it from another angle. I'm going to get into the multiple angles in a little bit. Even here, it's like the top hand or arm should be basically almost fully extended. You do not see that with Caulfield. Let's find an Ovechkin one. Elbow's bent. The top hand elbow is bent, so that's his left hand elbow. Hand does not come out. Does not come out. This is blurry. I'm going to show a different one. But you can even see it in there. It doesn't come out. Let's watch this one. Yeah. Well, his hand is off of his body, but look at the other stuff that's happening. He's leaning forward, like usually is a little bit more back. Usually it doesn't. This is dynamic. Different things can come up at different points. But the principle of the rotation and centrifugal force is still present in a shot like this. His hand doesn't punch out. His hand doesn't punch out. You should see like an extension exactly like this. If you're watching me on the screen, it should be exactly like this. That motion is not happening. It's right here. It's a rotation with the shoulders counteracting the hips. It's a rotation. Like even the bottom hand doesn't punch out. Because if something were to punch out, and here's where I'm going to get into showing somebody else trying to demo it. Just to distinguish what punching the top hand out looks like, even if the top hand punches out, as you see right here, that's a punch. Do we see exactly this motion with a little punch out as you see here with Ovi on this one-timer? We do not. We instead see, and this is a great slow-mo clip of it, it's a rotation. Everything, if I play this smooth in the slow-mo replay that you see here, there's no punching with the arms. A punch should look like what you see here with this coach. It should be coming out like this. You don't see that. You don't see that with Ovi. You don't see that with Bedard. You don't see that with Matthews. You don't see that with lots of other players. Even this that's not a punch. If it were a punch, it would be just the arms. The arms would follow first. But what you see instead is that the hips initiate the shot. It's the hips doing the work. Otherwise, his back leg wouldn't end up where it is right here. He wouldn't end up on his outside edge on his front foot. He wouldn't be lunging forward with his chest. His chest wouldn't fall down. His shoulders wouldn't face this. It wouldn't go from facing this way to facing that way at the same time that he shoots. If he was punching it out, this shot wouldn't be possible physically. Actually, all these shots wouldn't be. So that's an important distinction to make. It's not that the top hand punches out, because if it did, the shot would actually look completely different. It is instead fundamentally a rotation. Top hand doesn't really come out like it's supposed to. And what I meant by supposed to is that it's supposed to be like way out here and it's supposed to be a punch. But instead it circles his body, going from hip to hip, softens his hips too. He softens his ankle and knee, which basically means that his hips drop and they tilt, just like you can see in this little frame. If I were to slow it down even more, especially in this frame here, boom. It doesn't punch out. That's not a punch. That's not a punch. It's something fundamentally different. It's not a push-pull action, or it's not just that. Something fundamentally different. My question is, why does he get into this position with his ankle, his knee, and his hip? And this is what I'll discuss now about what is actually going on with the shot. Fundamentally, it's a rotation. I already said that. But what happens here is that the hips start the shots. We'll keep it slow. And then everything else follows after that. So everything else being the hips rotate a certain way, and the shoulders follow shortly after, because your shoulders and your hips are not tied together. They can bounce off of each other, and that's how you center yourself. Say if I'm twisting this way and I have to relax everything, I'm going to end up facing forward again. It's the same thing if I turn the other way. But that little centrifugal force is what creates your shot power. It's not that you step on one foot and then the other, or is that you just shift your weight. A little more specific than that. Now you can see again, knee, ankle, and hip all collapse. So they all tilt. They start right here, and then they go to right here. This also causes, watch this left foot, it causes it to point completely the other way from where he's shooting because of all of that rotation. Now you can see again that the top hand is off of the body, but that doesn't mean that it punches out or that it snaps back into place. It's all a smooth, continuous motion right here. Frame by frame, let's go right here. Let's go frame by frame. That's not a snap. That's a rotation. Watch his shoulders go first. Watch that. All those frames in between the shoulders, nothing, 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 nothing. Hips collapse first, then the shoulders twist a little bit, then the hands follow. It's not the hand coming out. It's not the punch. It's not a punch at all. You see that in every single shot that you take, big or small. Same thing happens right here. Here's a different angle of it. So the same angle that you get from, it's almost the same shot. And I say almost because obviously all these shots are in different situations. You don't have, it's very hard to get a single angle for every single shot that you take, but you also need that for a complete video analysis. And this is fundamentally where the top hand out cue comes from, which I guess I'll get into now. The top hand out cue fundamentally came from this angle, from seeing people shoot. Or it came from static imaging in a clip like this, or a shot like this. It's like, oh, his top hand is off of his chest. What you're missing here is how we got to this point. What is A to B? What is everything else in between? If you're to study something dynamic with static imaging, you're making a huge error in your knowledge of movement. The question is, how does he get from point A to point B? Actually, Kucherov's a good example of this. So that's the same image, roughly speaking, as what you see with this one here. A mistake people make is that they look at this and they say, oh yeah, that's what you need to do for your shooting, is just get your top hand out. But what they miss is the frames that happen right here, 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 right here. Like all that, all those frames. They miss all of those frames because they're stuck looking at just right here. They're just stuck looking at the flex of the stick and they're like, oh, that's cool. Look at the stick bending. But they miss, you see, even look at what's happening with the back toe. Why is it dragging like that? Coaches don't teach that. They don't teach you to drag your edge like this. They say it wastes energy. They don't teach you to drop your hip. They say it wastes energy. They don't teach you to like relax your shoulders and have it twist like this. What's the difference with the logo right here? How does the logo go from facing here where you don't see it to then being all open to the camera? If his hands were out and they were just like this, and that was all that you were doing, this push-pull action is all that you were doing, you wouldn't be able to see the logo right here. And you can see it clearly when you couldn't see it right here. The same thing happens with Shattenkirk in the background, actually. Like the logo appears, goes away, and now you see the back of his sweater. It's not hands out. That doesn't do it. Hands out doesn't do the trick. It's not what these guys are doing. And it also doesn't matter what edge you shoot off of, whether it's your blade side or your knob side foot. Like I've been showing a lot of examples where it's off the knob side primarily. Even McKinnon, where you saw him like in that picture, it's like, oh, here's the same photo as what you saw in like the Google imaging. If you were to search up NHL players are shooting, it's like there's that same photo. But again, what you miss, what happens here, what happens here, also what happens up here. Like you miss all of that. All of this is a setup for the shot. Like even if you go back to where he came from during the blue line to these crosses, like that's all a setup for the shot. But even then, top hand doesn't punch out. And if he were to try a punch out, I don't think he would score. Watch where his feet go. Stays in like, watch his footwork. It's like 2 crosses, 1, 2, step, step, and then the shot happens afterwards. The steps happen first, and then the shot follows. But this is all frame by frame. If you're to look at it fast, that's how it happens fast. You just didn't see it until you went frame by frame. And again, it's not that, in this case, it's not that the bottom hand is punching out. It's that the bottom hand follows the right foot in this case. Because if we were to look at it from another angle, if it shows up, his chest stays up, right? And then it collapses down. Now you don't see, you go from seeing the back of his numbers here, where his chest would be up, to then everything collapsing and going down. And then you see kind of like his little elbow. It's the same thing Same thing happening right here. This is a less clear rotation that's happening. It's like, oh yeah, in this view, like here's the paradox of not looking at multiple angles. Look, his hands are out in this frame. But what happened in this frame? What happened with this view? Like, what's going on here? It's like, oh, his hands are off the body. Did you not see what happened with his footwork that led up to it? Did you not see the little stutter right here that made this shot easier? Like these two steps, like on his left foot now and now on his right foot. That's when he starts to shoot. His hands just happen to be a little bit further off his body than a Line or an Ovechkin or sometimes a Bedard or a Matthews. It's like you can still get off the shot because he did here. But it's not the punch. The thing to focus on if you're wanting to learn about this, and don't focus on the hands. Don't even just focus on the footwork. You got to focus on the whole kinetic chain. And that's what I focus on. That's what I teach to all my players. Not many coaches are specific enough to dive into how the entire kinetic chain connects with each other, as you see me do here. I will watch this stuff ruthlessly. Like here's the same clip from multiple angles. It's like, this is what you need when you need to study video analysis or when you need to study something that's dynamic. You need multiple angles of the same thing, viewing it in full speed like we just did here. And you also need to film it frame by frame. So you need both the fast and the slow. You also need to do this with every single angle that you can get. So this angle will still matter even though it's behind, because you can see his footwork. And even though you can't see the hands, you can still see what's happening with his body. Like watch his back, watch his numbers. Why do his numbers go from here where you can't see them, regardless of the camera moving? Why do his numbers go from here to here? Why is there this little shift with his shoulders and with his upper body? Why is there this increase in knee bend or knee going forward when at the same time that he shoots? If this wasn't a full body rotation, none of that would be happening. None of this would be happening. That's why this view, even though it doesn't show the hands out view that you get from here, it's like, or even like the other angles that we showed, you can still see, watch what happens with his upper body. That you can still see that same little shift in his upper body that you see if we backed it up to this one. Why does it shift over like that? Why does he bend over like that? That's not what's taught. What coaches will teach is the opposite of that. They want to keep everything level, and it's just like punch out with your hands. It's all with the hands. It's 90% with the hands. It's like, clearly it isn't. It's not. There's no way it is. Otherwise, his upper body shouldn't be moving that little bit. Again, the upper body moves a little bit and then everything else follows after that. Because that's how kinesthetics work. It's just how it is. That's the technical side of hockey that isn't talked about. And then it's just like, oh yeah, it's all just the hands. If you only look at the hands, of course it's only going to be just the hands. But if you learn to look at the whole kinetic chain, you'll realize like there's more going on here. And that is what I'm trying to say with guys like Connor Bedard, saying that it's like, oh, it's just about getting the hands out. It's just about getting the top hand out on that shot. That's the biggest key that you need to learn. It's like, no, it isn't. No, it's not. I watch your videos, Connor. You don't always get your top hand out. Watching your first WHL goal, if we were to zoom in right here, I know the video quality is garbage. Your top hand doesn't come out. It doesn't punch out. It rotates around your body just like it does with like a Line. If we were to go to this clip over here. Like if his top hand came out, it should be punched out much further. His elbow's bent. His elbow shouldn't be bent if it punched out. Like The way that they're teaching shooting is not actually what's happening. So this is what I had to relearn. For a long time, I was taught that it was all, oh, it's all just the hands. You just need to get your top hand out like this far and then pull it back really hard, which is like, it can work. Obviously, people can get the puck off of the ice if you do push-pull. But if you want to shoot like Matthews, if you want to shoot like Bedard, if you want to shoot like a Laine, if you want to shoot like an Ovechkin, if you want to shoot like an Elias Pettersson, which I haven't even talked about yet, you need different mechanics than that. There's no question about it. If you watch the film enough, you need different mechanics. By the way, a Pettersson is so interesting to me because he's at least 30 to 50 pounds lighter than the average like NHL defenseman. And again, top hand doesn't come out. Why does it circle his body? Like, why does it circle his body close to him? It's like he doesn't listen to the common coaching cues. Clearly, because it's like, oh, his top. Look where his top hand is. It stays in tight, and he still gets flex on his stick. Like, look at that, and it still launches a bullet. Oh, and then you can look at this angle and be like, oh yeah, his top hand is off of his body here. But what does it look like from different angles? If you were to try to copy this from a single angle, you would become this coach. If you were to copy that clip from a single angle, you would become this. But if you were to copy it from multiple angles and with just taking a little bit of time and studying this stuff, and looking at it from multiple angles, going through the same process that I did where you go through each clip in slow-mo and then speed it up, looking at different details, looking at how the feet relate to the head and how the hips relate to the shoulders, and etc. And then you do that same thing with tons of different angles. That's how you get an NHL shot. I have no doubt in saying that I have an NHL shot. I don't see any of these coaches who I'm pulling up have an NHL shot. The point here is, this is what it's like to study something dynamic, just like shooting in hockey. And if you don't do it right, you're not going to get a Bedard shot. You're not going to get a Matthews shot. You're not going to shoot like Pettersson. You're not going to shoot like Ovechkin. I'm not interested in shooting like these coaches. I'm interested in shooting like the best players, the best shooters in hockey. I'm actually going to give feedback to Jeremy Rupke of How To Hockey. I actually agree with you, Jeremy, that you see that the top hand goes from hip to hip. So like when Bedard's shooting, when he starts to shoot, he'll start it at this opposite hip like you have here. Like that's great. I've been looking at that for 5 years, and that's great. It's great that you're seeing that. I truly mean it. It's like it's great that you're seeing that. Yes, Bedard does do that. I also think it's great that you see that he has this little bow in his wrist, which I've also been studying for 5 years. But that the fact that you see it now, perfectly fine. What you're missing here, and we'll go to your clip, it's your footwork. We watched Bedard first and then went to you, Jeremy. You actually step forward, which actually causes the puck to travel more forward than Bedard's. It's an interesting little paradox here. Fundamentally, the difference between your two shots is actually your footwork. It's not the hands. The reason that the puck goes forward, as you said in your video, is because you actually step forward. Watch your transition from right to left foot. If we compared that footwork with Bedard, the reason that he stays in place is because he actually stays in place with his footwork. Now, I want you to watch something interesting too. Watch his left leg. Notice how straight it is right here. Now, it's not fully extended, but it's straight. It's in a relaxed position. He's ready to shoot. Now, watch the knee bend. Look at that knee. And watch the other knee, too. Actually, if I were to circle this, you'll actually see that the right knee is below the left knee. So it's like this. Why does something like that happen in a human body when it's supposed to be like rigid and straight? That's because the hips tilt. As I've shown from all the other clips too, you will see, especially in a Laine video, that the hips tilt and then everything else falls in a rotation. It's fine, again, that you're noticing the details like the top hand going from hip to hip, which actually stretches this out. If you stretch this out, everything else opens up a lot better. That's perfect. But what you're missing is fundamentally the footwork. Your hips don't drop the same way. The bottom hands don't punch the same way. Like, you're punching a little more forward. The reason that it looks like it's punching forward is because the effect that happens with the top hand is that it goes from hip to hip. But as I showed in my main video, if you have a follow through that rotates, it will change where your stick points. So if I point it from here and then point it this way, or if I punched it that way, point it this way or punch it that way, all that's going to look differently, say if I were to go this way, or if I were to rotate this way. Okay, that's not the same thing as pointing your puck at the target, by the way. But as a key difference, that is why, let's say, like, his stick whips way to his other side of his body, and yours just stays right in front of you, like fully extended, as you can see right here. It's like you just, that's the classic cue of just, you punch your hands out and then it stays right there. Bedard's doesn't do that. It whips around. Though I can break this down for many other coaches if I wanted to, but I think I'm just going to leave that there. So I'm just going to leave you with my progress over time. From as many videos as I could pull up where I used to punch my hand out. Any of you know who have worked with me in person know what my shot's like. I'm not going to listen to any of, like, you people in the comments if you don't know, if you haven't seen me in person. I'm just going to let the people who've seen me in person speak for everyone else. They're the only ones who know my shot. You people in the comments who haven't looked enough, I don't blame you for not looking, but if you haven't looked enough, what do you have to say to those people who have seen my shot and are amazed by it? What do you have to say to those people who have seen my skating and are amazed by it? Amazed that I didn't used to skate that way. What do you have to say to those people who have seen my transformation from 2019, where I was all resentful and bitter, especially against my junior teams, which eventually led to me having 0 points my last year, now becoming the coach that I am today, albeit still with the same intensity. I'm not critical of you coaches. I'm just saying you have to be more specific than just a cue like this. I don't know if you're studying it to the degree that I'm studying it. It's like, I haven't met you. So it's like, I'm not making that claim that you're not studying these things. Obviously, you've made a living off of helping out a bunch of NHLers. It's like, that's wonderful. That's wonderful that you've helped these pros. But I am helping pros too. I train like a pro, actually. And I am not seeing you people do it. I'm not seeing you coaches do it. I don't care if you're a 40-year-old coach or a 50-year-old coach or you're my age, 24. You're not training like a pro. It's going to be much harder for someone like me to take you seriously. So for the people saying that, oh, I'm just wrong with my analysis on Bedard, it's like, sorry, I'm going to delete a comment right now that says that. Sorry, wrong. What do you mean? That doesn't mean anything. It's like, why don't you explain it? Oh yeah, I can just go to your page and see what your analysis is. And your main analysis is that the top hand does 90% of the shots. It's like, clearly it doesn't. Like I just laid out, why would the hips drop? Why would the knee collapse? Why would the shoulders rotate? Why would the upper body rotate in both directions, backhand or forehand? Why would all of that be happening if it was just the arms, if it was 90% arms? It doesn't look like it's 90% arms. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the film. It's like, if it was truly 90% arms, it's like, you wouldn't be shooting like Bedard. He doesn't shoot 90% arms. If you want to see more content like this, where I break down people's form, or I break down NHLers' form, and I've done relentlessly for the past 5 years, just let me know in the comments below. This was an expansion and elaboration off of why I said Connor Bedard was wrong about the way that he shoots. Obviously, he doesn't shoot wrong, because he has a terrific shot, but in the way that he's teaching it, it's not the same as the way he does. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.